Good afternoon, everybody. Um, this is the 30th meeting of the 24th Council, and we'll call this meeting to order. We'll first do a roll call, and the two counselors who are not with us today are Counselor Borrego, President Council Borrego, and Counselor Pena. They're both excused today. All other counselors are present via Zoom. We'll start then with a moment of silence and followed by the pledge in English by Counselor Bassan and the pledge in Spanish with Counselor Benton. Will you join me in a moment of silence?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Thank you, counselors. And then proceeding, I'll go ahead and read from the script. As was noted in a press release from our office on Friday, posted on our website and noted on our published council agenda, this meeting has special procedures given by the governor's declaration of a public health emergency and restrictions on gatherings. Therefore, this meeting is being held via Zoom video conference. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through 4 different platforms: GovTV on Comcast, Channel 16, the GovTV website, YouTube, and on Zoom webinar. These live streams can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those of you watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. The video recording of this and all past council meetings will also remain available for viewing at any time on the City Council's website. Council staff is available via telephone if members of the public need assistance in finding the videos online. Please call 768-3100 for assistance during business hours, which are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. The council is accepting live general public comment today, excuse me, as well as any written comments. Written comments received by 1 p.m. were distributed to the councilors in advance of today's meeting. And item 3 on our agenda is proclamations and presentations. We'll start off with Counselor Jones, who has a proclamation recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Counselor.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I would like to read the proclamation, please, to the recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and then we will hopefully hear from a few ladies who are accepting the proclamation. So the proclamation reads, whereas April 2021 marks the official 20th anniversary of National Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and whereas sexual violence, SV, is a widespread, preventable public health problem in New Mexico, and whereas FBI data reflects New Mexico is ranked 7th for most rape and sexual assault cases, and whereas nationally 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetimes, and whereas nationally 1 in 8 female rape victims report their sexual assault occurred before the age of 10 years, and 1 in 4 male rape victims also report it occurred before the age of 10 years. And whereas children and adolescents who are members of marginalized communities are at an increased risk of sexual violence victimization. And whereas recent estimates put the cost of rape at $122,000 $461 per victim, including medical costs, lost productivity, criminal justice activities, and other costs. And whereas in 2019, there were 1,467 sex crimes reported to the Albuquerque Police Department, and these statistics do not represent the true incidence and prevalence for multiple reasons, including that not all victims report the crime to law enforcement. And whereas for 48 years, the Rape Crisis Center of Central New Mexico has provided 24-hour crisis services to sexual assault survivors, and in 2020 assisted 1,092 sexual assault survivors. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the council, the governing body of the city of Albuquerque, hereby proclaim the month of April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Thank you. And accepting this award today are Veronica Flores, Development Coordinator, Stephanie Griego, Volunteer Program Director, and Kim Stark, Executive Director. And thank you, ladies, for all you do. Would you like to say something?
Hi, as you said, my name is Veronica Flores, the Development Coordinator for the Rape Crisis Center, and I'm here to just accept the award and thank you all for recognizing this issue as it is. We do this every April, every year. We try to spread as much awareness around the community as possible. The more we talk about it, the better we can handle it, and the farther we can get as far as helping our survivors and victims get through it. We just want to thank also our partnering agencies as well, SANE and everybody down at the Albuquerque Family Advocacy Center for all of the 24-hour work they do. They're on call nonstop. They assist our victims directly. Our counseling team is wonderful with helping our clients long term. And we're just very excited to be able to finally make this an official ordeal where, you know, everyone will recognize it as such, and we're just very grateful. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Would the other ladies like to say something, or are they too shy?
This is Stephanie Griego. I just want to tell you thank you, Councilor Jones, and all our council members for supporting us with this. It is something that really needs to be made aware of. And if any of you would like a teal bulb, we're trying to paint the town teal in awareness and spread it throughout Albuquerque that it is a community issue and we do need to bring it up and talk about it. If anybody does need to call us and you need to refer anybody to us, our hotline is available 24/7, 266-7711. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, and thank you, ladies, for all you do. I have visited the center, and you do amazing work. Thank you. Madam Vice President, I give it back to you.
Thank you. So Councilor Sena, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice President. I just wanted to thank Councilor Jones and those here to receive this proclamation. I've been pretty open about being a survivor of sexual abuse myself. In fact, I have the picture over my shoulder here is actually of Amanda Nguyen, who has been going across the nation, bringing more awareness to sexual assault and doing bills of rights for sexual assault survivors. And so I just want to thank you all for doing what you're doing and bringing more awareness to April. And really the statistics that Councilor Jones shared is really devastating to hear, but we know and see this in our community, and just want to recognize that as people even came forward to me sharing their own stories, I just hope that they know that there are a lot of resources and community out there like the Rape Crisis Center. So just thank you again for that.
Thank you, Councilor Sena. Were there any other hands up? I don't see any other hands up. So I would just like to give my thanks also to Ms. Flores and Ms. Griego for all of the work that has gone on at the Rape Crisis Center. You know, that's been around since much longer than I've been in Albuquerque, I believe. I first came to New Mexico in 1975, and I've been in New Mexico, or I've been in Albuquerque, I think, since '79. And so that is a question I would have. When was the Rape Crisis Center first created, and did that come out of UNM?
Yes, the Rape Crisis Center started in 1973, and it was originally in the basement of UNM Women's Sociology Department.
Okay, thank you. I thought that I remembered something like that. So anyway, congratulations on all of the work that you do. You don't get enough recognition, but hopefully this helped just a little bit. So our next presentation is from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Albuquerque Alumni Chapter. And this was a request from President Borrego, but I'll go ahead and do this introduction today. I believe presenting today we have Rada Moss, Miss Rada Moss, who is a Social Action Committee and is with the Social Action Committee, excuse me, and then Miss Jasmine Madison, who is the chapter president. So I think we'll be bringing them in and letting you two ladies loose again in just a moment. Okay. All right. So do we have Miss Moss and Miss Madison with us? And if so, I'll turn this over for your presentation to Miss Rada Moss. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your first name.
It's okay. Thank you so much, Councilor Gibson. We appreciate you. Thank you all, and good afternoon. On behalf of the Albuquerque Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we do thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Rada Moss. I'm a member of the Albuquerque Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, as well as the chair for the Political Awareness and Involvement Committee. I am here with our chapter president, Jasmine Madison, who's going to share some information with you in a moment. We are very thrilled to share the great news and work of Delta in our city with you. So thank you again for having us. I would like to especially acknowledge Council President Cynthia Borrego and Councilor Gibson. Cynthia Borrego invited us to this and gave us this opportunity. So I just made sure that I acknowledged her. We know that you are all very busy and have a tight schedule, so we truly appreciate this time. We really do. Now I'm going to turn this over to our president and my soror, Jasmine Madison.
Moss. So is it okay if I share my screen? I know we sent a presentation to Julian, but I don't know if he wants to lead that, or should I?
Evidently, we did not get that presentation, okay. So we can have you, we'll share the screen with you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman.
Sure.
All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so as my soror Rada Moss said, we know you don't have a lot of time, so we're going to get through this as quickly as we can. This is just a little bit of information about Delta, who we are and what we do in our community. And so let's get started. So a little bit of history. Delta Sigma Theta was founded on the campus of Howard University in Washington, D.C. on January 13th, 1913, and we are affectionately known as Deltas. So if you call us Deltas, we won't get mad at that. So a little bit more about our organization. So we have a president and a CEO and an executive board, and our organization is broken into 7 different regions. And each of these regions can have dozens and even hundreds of chapters. The Albuquerque Alumni Chapter is in the Southwest, or the blazing Southwest region, as we like to call it. And it was chartered right here in Albuquerque on March 18th, 1967. So we just celebrated our 54th birthday. A little bit more about Delta. We have over 300,000 members in both collegiate and alumni chapters. So collegiate are students who are currently matriculating in college, and alumni members are the more seasoned among us who are no longer in college. We have chapters in England, Japan, Germany, the Virgin Islands, Bermuda, the Bahamas, Jamaica, Republic of Korea, the Emirates, Canada, and so on and so forth. So we are not just a national organization, we are a global organization. And so I want to show you a few of our members. And you may be saying, oh, wait a minute, is that? It is, because the members of Delta span politics, education, athletics, and everything in between. And so these are some of our more well-known members, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out some of our local members. And so Carnes Salisbury is a housing rights champion. If you were not aware, Albuquerque's Housing Authority building is named after her. She is one of our late sorors. Sonia Smith is a recently appointed cabinet secretary for the New Mexico Department of Veteran Services. The beautiful LaDonna Harris, who is the founder and president of the Americans for Indian Opportunity Organization. And Teresa Carson is the executive director of the Greater Albuquerque African American Chamber of Commerce. And so while some of those people you saw on the slide before are really well-known and famous all over the world, these are some of our more well-known and famous women right here in Albuquerque. So what do we do and who are we? So Delta's programming falls under 5 different points: economic development, educational development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental health, and political awareness and involvement. And we have been charged by our national headquarters to have programming in each of these areas. And so some of the programs that we have, you can see here, financial fortitude. We know that economics play a very important part, not only in our community, but in our country and our world. And so it's really up to us to help our communities to understand how to manage, how to maintain, how to invest, how to start their own businesses. For educational development, we have a couple of youth programs for young ladies in middle school through high school, the Delta Academy and our Delta Gems programs. We also have scholarships, which I'll talk about in a minute. For international awareness and involvement, as I mentioned, we have chapters across the globe. And so we have initiatives across the globe as well. A few of those are listed here. We have the Mary Help of the Sick Memorial Hospital in Kenya. We have a school in Haiti. We have an orphanage in Swaziland. And we also, because we know that specifically for African-American women, AIDS is still an issue. And African women are becoming infected with the virus at still alarmingly high rates. And so that is a part of the situation that we are now taking a part of with our World AIDS Day celebrations and our World AIDS Day memorials. Physical and mental health is also extremely important. One of our national initiatives is the Healthy Lifestyle Total Woman Mind, Body, and Spirit program. And political awareness and involvement. It's how we started, it's why we exist, it's why we're here. Delta Days at the United Nations, Delta Days at the nation's capital, which we just celebrated over the past week, and social action. We've been to the Roundhouse more than a few times because we are very involved in what's happening in our community. And so, why are we here? How can you help? And so, as I mentioned, we have 5 points in our thrust that the community can help us within our programming, because Albuquerque has a few challenges. And so our programming really is designed to, from almost like a cradle to not quite grave, but we want to make sure that we are impacting our community from our youth. And that's from our youth into our families and our more seasoned among us. And so for our economic development thrust, food insecurity and women and children experiencing homelessness are a couple of the programs that we're preparing to gear up for the fall. We know that, unfortunately, child hunger in Albuquerque and in New Mexico is a problem. And so as women of Delta, we see a problem, then we feel that it's our job to fix it. Educational development. As I mentioned, we do have our youth initiatives with the Delta Academy and Delta Gems. We are in a new normal with COVID. And so we are reworking our program, we're reworking our curricula to make sure that we can still impact the young ladies in our program. We also have tax-deductible scholarship donations. As far as physical and mental health, we really would like to be a part of substance abuse and mental health treatment programs. As I mentioned, we are starting with our young girls to make sure that we reach those, but we also know that in our community, substance abuse and mental health are issues. And so we do have committee chairs who are working on initiatives to help with this programming effort. international awareness and involvement, and political awareness and involvement, women in reentry from a multicultural approach. And we recently started a program where we are creating welcome home packets to women who were formerly incarcerated, because we learned that they are released and have very little. And so we collected toiletries, shampoo, soap, lotion, deodorant, things that we take for granted. But for someone who has been away for a very long time, they need these things to really help them to re-enter into society in a good way. And of course, we have other opportunities as well. So we have all kinds of events. Of course, we have fundraisers, because it's not easy to have programming without funds. You can volunteer at our service events. We also have partnered with Pope Joy to bring the arts to women and children in New Mexico. And of course, there are so many smart, intelligent, capable people on this call. If you would like to be participate in one of our programs as a sponsor, we always welcome that as well. And so a little bit about our scholarships. We have 4 different awards. 3 are merit-based and 1 is need-based. These are listed here: the Judith R. Harris Scholarship, Margaret E. Carson Scholarship, the Lion Scott Scholarship, and the Sonia Smith Scholarship for non-traditional students. And these awards range from $250 to $1,000. And in the past 5 years, we've had awardees from Albuquerque High School, Rio Rancho High School, Next Gen Academy, and Cleveland High School. And this year's recipients, we're really proud of. We are given a little bit under $4,000 total to 5 young women, one being a non-traditional nursing student at CNM. Also, we have a student from UNM. We have a student from Albuquerque High School who will be attending Howard University, where Delta was founded, Cleveland High School, as well as Health Leadership High School. And so we wanted to come to you all today just to let you know that, one, we are here. We know that the work that you all do is not an easy job. And we want you to know that we are here to help. And we want you to know that we have programming, we have people, boots on the ground, to help make your jobs a little bit easier, because we know it can be difficult. Albuquerque is a fascinating place. It's a beautiful place, but sometimes it's not the easiest place. And we just want you all to know that we are here for you. And so I'm going to turn it back over to my soror, Rada Moss. Did I do okay?
You did great.
All right, thank you.
So we're just going to wrap it up, and just wanted to let you know that if you are so inclined to support specifically our scholarship programs, we would be most grateful. As you know, that we have been affected, as everyone else has, by COVID, and we haven't been able to fundraise like we normally would and should, adhering to the safety marks that we need to adhere to. So if you are so inclined to support our scholarship program, we would be most grateful. And that is our appeal. Do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts for Jasmine and I?
Thank you. First of all, I want to tell you thank you for this presentation. And I'm glad to hear about you. And I'm glad to hear about all of the different things that you're involved in. So, but we might have some questions out there. I don't see any hands. But well, let me ask you a question. While the presentation was going on, I brought up the website, and this looks like it's the national or international website, perhaps. Do you have a local website? Can I get to that from the big one, the big site?
The big one. So we do have a local website. It's abqdeltas.org. And there you'll find more information about our programs. There are also links where you can donate to both our programs and our scholarships. You'll just see our events and find a lot more information about us and our history.
And if you ever do have any questions, if some may come up later, please don't hesitate to let us know, specifically President Jasmine.
Thank you.
All right, we will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Doing this presentation for us.
Thank
And let's
you.
stay in touch.
All right.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, so moving along in the meeting, typically we would do an economic development discussion right now. Oh, wait a second. I forgot. How could I forget Mr. O'Donnell and Mr. Kyriakos? Bonus. So this is our third presentation from our lobbyists in Washington and our good friends over there. We have Mr. John O'Donnell, and we have also our local lobbyists, Joe Thompson and David Jaramillo. So I'm sorry? Yes, and Kyriakos is with us. We were just saying hi to Kyriakos just a few moments ago. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to, I don't know how you gentlemen have this organized. Your presentation, should we start with you, Mr. O'Donnell?
That's fine.
Okay.
I would ask, Madam President, I would ask, thank you, Julian, you anticipated my request. So what I wanted to do, Kyriakos and I want to do is just give you a brief report on what's happening in Washington that affects the city of Albuquerque. And within the last 2 months, 3 months, there have been a number of significant developments. There's been one additional COVID assistance bill passed by Congress, and the introduction of infrastructure legislation by the House of Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And the administration has introduced a rather large infrastructure proposal. So let me go to the next slide and just mention that City of Albuquerque has already sent the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we passed along to the Government Finance Officers Association some of the questions that the City of Albuquerque has regarding the implementation guidance for the last COVID relief bill that passed, which was the American Rescue Plan. The Treasury Department is supposed to have the implementation guidance out by May 11th. That's 60 days from when the bill passed. We expect that they are going to take the full 2 months to get that direction out to local governments and state governments. We're also in the process of the FY22 appropriations, which that bill will be taken up on both the House and Senate side during the month of April, May, and into the summer. They're hoping to get that bill finished in what they call regular order. That would mean both the House and the Senate can agree to what, well, they finished the markups of all 12 appropriations bills on both sides of the Hill, and then are able to get a bill passed before the start of the new fiscal year on October 1st. That's not been something that's been accomplished by Congress for a number of years. The other thing that's supposed to happen this week is President Biden's budget for FY22 is supposed to be unveiled, and it's going to be a small version of the normal budget. In fact, it's expected to only address the discretionary programs. And one of the reasons that that will be important in terms of the FY22 appropriations process is because the numbers that he comes forward with in for his budget proposal for the discretionary programs will be kind of a guideline for the House and Senate appropriations subcommittees to look at as they begin to develop their bills, as I said, which they hope to pass by the end of September. The other major thing that's going on are the infrastructure proposals and the relationships between them. The president's American Jobs Plan is the one that is most significant in terms of scope and cost. The House Transportation Infrastructure actually passed an INVEST Act last year, and it was reintroduced this year, HR 2, and that bill is really aimed at highway and transit, surface transportation programs. There is no companion bill to it in the Senate at this point. Last year, the Environment and Public Works Committee, actually was in 2019, the Environment and Public Works Committee passed a highway program reauthorization, but that was not reintroduced last year.
and there's been no reintroduction of that legislation this year. In the Senate, the surface transportation, highway, and transit programs are handled by two different committees. The banking committee handles the transit programs, and they have not introduced legislation at this point. Julian, if I could have the next page. So I want to look back just for a second in terms of talking about these 3 or 4 areas that I just mentioned in terms of money. I just wanted to go back, take a look in the rearview mirror at what Albuquerque has received over the past year since March of 2020. In the CARES Act, there was approximately, these numbers I will tell you are not exact because some funding is mixed in with other I haven't mixed any of the funding that may come to the city through other sources. If say there were nonprofits that were getting funding from the CARES Act directly, but what you have approximately is 200 million, 150 of that was from the Coronavirus Relief Fund for state and local government. The bill that was passed in December and signed by President Trump in January provided 31 million. There was no state and local government assistance, as you'll recall, that was in that program or that act. And then the final one is the American Rescue Plan, which was passed in March, and that was 113 million in direct assistance to the city through the Coronavirus Fund, and then additional funding for rental assistance, home programs, and aviation. Yes, aviation, but aviation has not, the funding that the city received for aviation out of the American Rescue Plan is not factored into this one. Nikki Allen sent me some information earlier today about what the airport received through the Consolidated Appropriations Act in 21. I think that was about 7.6 million for aviation. And back in the CARES Act, I believe it was about 19.7 million. So the city has done well in terms of the COVID funding. And I would also commend the city on keeping excellent records, especially on the CARES Act, because that's the oldest of all of these, where I believe the city has obligated all the funding and has provided the necessary assurances to Treasury that it has done so within the time frame that that money was to be allocated. Julian, could I have the next slide, please? So I just want to spend a second. I mentioned that the Treasury guidance is really critical at this point because there are a lot of questions from local governments about the details that go along with these 4 points that were in the legislation about how the coronavirus money, the 113.6 million that the city got from the fund, how it's to be spent. And we have been, as I said earlier, speaking with the National League of Cities, the Conference of Mayors, the National Association of Counties, and the government finance officers about the details. Nobody has those yet, but there are certainly those 4 or 5 organizations have certainly been in touch with the Treasury Department with the list of questions that their membership have about how what the guidelines are going to be that we will have to follow to address these 4 provisions. If I could have the next page, Julian. So the thing that probably is of biggest interest to many local governments and to nonprofits is the return of earmarks. In February, the House Appropriations Committee announced that it would be taking earmarks in the FY22 appropriations process. And I want to say as a backdrop to this, we've discussed it with the Intergovernmental and Legislative Committee of the city, and we've had probably 3 or 4 meetings over the past month and a half where we've talked about the city's federal program, and we talked a bit about the earmarks. it's important to know that the earmarks really apply to 3 different categories. And the House is the only body at this point that has officially said that they will earmark projects as they did back up till 2010 when the process stopped. In the House, the term they're using for project earmarks is Community Project Fund. Members are limited to 10 requests. That does not mean that they will get 10 earmarks. There are a very limited number of eligible federal programs that can be earmarked. In fact, it's about 1% of the discretionary budget, which historically, even back when they were doing earmarks, that was about all that they did earmark, is about 1% of the discretionary programs, the budgets. The form that the city or anybody requesting an earmark that you have to submit to a congressional office is rather detailed and includes requests for formal demonstration of support, community support for the earmark. There's a question on each member's form in the House that says, what's the importance of this earmark to my congressional delegation? Earmark requests will have to be posted by members on their website. And that brings us to, well, what's the website for Congressional District 1 going to look like? Because we have no incumbent at the moment. So what we are doing with the city's earmark requests are collecting them. They will be sent to the administrative office, which is functioning out of the Longworth building for what used to be Congresswoman Holland's office. Her former legislative director is acting as the chief of staff in that office and collecting that kind of information. So we're going to send it there. And the same information will be sent to Senators Heinrich and Senator Lujan. And the unique situation is here, the reason that nothing can be done with Congressional District Office number 1 with earmarks right now is because you have to have the member of Congress actually certify on the appropriations website that they are submitting these and have full knowledge of the information that's been transmitted supporting this earmark request. I expect that what will happen, and we're planning to do this, is we will have a stack of the city earmark requests and make sure that the new member of Congress, the day after the election, has those in somebody's hands, if not the person's hand, staff hands, so they know what our interests are. And I understand this from talking with Eric Werwa, who's the acting chief of staff in that office, and his conversations with authorizing an appropriations committee staff is that those committee staff are aware that the city of Albuquerque will have project requests, and they will be also transmitted, I think, informally to those committee staff sometime in June, and formally by the new member of Congress during that same month. Senate earmarks, the Senate has not made official how they are going to treat earmarks this year. There's been a great deal of discussion by Senator Leahy from Vermont, who's chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Shelby from Alabama, who's been on appropriations forever and is an old hand at this process. Senator McConnell has, I think, made a determination to leave it up to the Senate's Republican senators to do what they want in this process. And I expect the Democratic senators, following what the Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has said, they will be doing earmarks. But there are no rules as there have been published by the House yet. And I checked Senator Heinrich's website today, and he still has any requests for appropriations, he still has the old announcement, if you will, of programmatic and legislative requests. And those are really about how much do you want a federal program funded like CDBG. That would be a programmatic request. And just as I'm talking about Senator Lujan, his legislative director is calling, and I asked him the same question about Senator Lujan's form. So the Senate members are certainly aware of what's happening in the House, and I think we should hear soon about, excuse me, about what the Senate intends to do in terms of guidelines and the submission of community project fund earmarks. I would also add that, and I said this earlier, that in our conversations with the Intergovernmental and Legislative Committee from the city over the past month and a half, we've had conversations about this. There have been a list of projects that we've looked at and made some recommendations for them to be submitted as earmarks. There's also one or two projects that we discussed that may actually be earmark requests that could go in for the surface transportation reauthorization legislation. So with that, I think I would say, yeah, since I've mentioned, Julian, if you'll, yes, thank you. So I've mentioned the authorization request. So the INVEST Act on the House side is the Highway and Transit Reauthorization. The chairman of that committee has announced that he will accept earmark project requests, and those would be for highway and transit programs. The American Jobs Proposal is a large program, a large proposal that the president has made. People wonder what the relationship is going to be between the jobs plan and HR2 when it comes to highway and transit reauthorization. Right now, I would say the American Jobs Plan is overarching, but we'll probably see the details of the INVEST Act as part of that. And I think it's reflected in the outline that has been provided to the press and to the public. And I mentioned before that there is a transportation for highways. There is a transportation bill on the Senate side, but it was introduced back in 2019. And we'll have to see what the Senate plans to do in terms of highway and transit legislation. And they may be waiting at this point to see how the American Jobs Plan proposal moves forward. So that is, in a rather large nutshell, what is going on in Washington at the moment. Are there questions?
Thank you,
Madam
Mr.
President?
O'Donnell. So, do we have any questions from counselors going forward? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you.
So then I guess we'll go ahead and move to Mr. Joe Thompson and Mr. Jaramillo. David
Thank you very
Jaramillo.
much, Madam President. Hi, everybody.
Good to see
It's a pleasure to be with you today. As you know, the regular session ended on March 20th, and the governor has till April 9th to sign or veto legislation. I'm going to focus on the capital outlay aspect. We got just over $42 million for the city of Albuquerque, and the governor has until this Friday, or is it the 9th? Yeah, the 9th at noon to sign or veto legislation. And so hopefully everyone has gotten their letters in to the governor's office with the articulation on the projects that are of particular importance to you, and with an articulation on what we will do with the money, if we're bringing municipal funds with it or other funds. But I feel really good about our process. We haven't gotten any really negative feedback on any of the projects that we worked on. We had initially about 170 projects for the city of Albuquerque. That was winnowed down to about 150 total once they started merging duplicates and stuff like that. I have to tell you that now in my 12 years of working for the city, this is by far the best I've ever seen the city writ large do in terms of the support from Mr. Menicucci and his team, Mr. Motzko and the folks there, the mayor's office, and certainly the council and the analysts. I'm really, really proud to be working with you all. And it's just, I thought we really, really did well in the way that we interacted with legislators, the information we provided them. It was a new challenge for us. And so there are some lessons that I've learned that I think going forward, maybe we could talk about during the interim on some things that we might do to even improve what we've done. But I have to tell you, Madam President, I'm really, really impressed with the Albuquerque team. And it's a pleasure to be a part of it. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. So any questions for Mr. Thompson? I'll just say, since I have there's an opportunity to do so, that it's really been very helpful. My office has gained a lot from your expertise and your offices. David, of course, Jaramillo has been very helpful in communicating with our legislators. This has not been an easy past couple of sessions, this year and last year, in having much face-to-face contact. So let's see. No, last year we were up there, right? We did have face-to-face. It's been a long year. It seems like it's lasted a couple of years anyway. So I really appreciate that. And I can tell you my constituents really appreciate that. We talk a lot about the Los Altos Park and pool area over there. And we were fortunate enough to get some money for that, which we're going to put to really good use. But your office has been extremely helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I don't see anything, but thank you. Thanks for making yourself available.
Appreciate it.
Oh, Mr. Jaramillo, did you want to say something?
Sure, Madam President, councilors. Joe is rightfully in Santa Fe designated the king of capital, and he just laid out why he is, and he has a great team always. And Bianca and this year, Libya and Naya were just rock stars. I'm just his Sancho Panza on the policy stuff. So, Madam President, if you don't mind, I told Mr. Menicucci I would discuss some of the policy stuff for a few minutes. Some of that was discussed at IGR throughout the session, but for the councilors that were not on that, I'd like to just briefly update on, it was a busy session, to say. Despite it being a virtual session and an unusual session for all of us, it was quite busy. There wasn't the breadth of or the number of bills that we would normally see in a session, but the number of big bills may have been even more, and there was a lot of focus on them. So just real quickly, I'll go through some of the big ones. House Bill 4 is probably one of the biggest bills that will impact municipalities. That is the creation of a state civil rights act. And around the country, it's called the abolishment of qualified immunity. Not quite what it is. The act itself does prohibit the use of the qualified immunity law that has been developed in the federal courts for these new class of cases. That defense will still be available of course, in federal court. What it does is it creates a new cause of action under the state constitution for constitutional violations of New Mexicans' rights under New Mexico's Bill of Rights. And I'll address why that's important in a minute. But importantly, what it does is it caps damages at $2 million inclusive of attorney's fees. There is no such cap for damages or attorney's fees in the federal regime. So a lawyer and a litigant will really sort of have to choose, do they want to try their luck in federal court where they might face a qualified immunity defense, or do they want to pursue their claim in state court where they'll have a cap on damages and attorney's fees? I really want to give a shout out to the city attorney, Mr. Aguilar, as well as Damon Martinez, who were very instrumental in our meetings with the speaker, who was the primary sponsor of the bill, with his team about the concerns that the city had about the breadth of the original bill. We were able to really get it focused on the Bill of Rights, which gives the city a lot more clarity. We were able to discuss the fiscal impact along with the municipal league's input. And I think that really went a long way in getting the cap on the damages, which likewise gives a lot more certainty in terms of the city's exposure going forward. That bill has not, I don't believe that bill's been signed, but it's anticipated it will be signed towards the end of the cycle. GSD spoke in favor of the bill. So that's coming. House Bill 20 sort of became relevant to the city at the very end when the Senate put on a public option that was promptly removed. So that bill is the paid sick leave bill. Something that occurred in that was very important to businesses within the city was allowing exemptions for businesses that provide a more robust PPO plan. That was very important to businesses. And so that was an accomplishment to protect some of those businesses. And they're the folks who provide real generous PPO that might be even bigger than what this new law would allow. So again, that bill is awaiting signature. House Bill 285 was a bill that Senator Daniel Ivy Soto sponsored towards the end. It was Senator Ortiz y Pino that ultimately carried the bill to its finish. A very important bill that Damon Martinez worked on, that we worked on with the sponsors, changing the way that mental health holds can be done for folks or families who are in need of having a loved one sent in for a psychiatric evaluation. It's often a very difficult thing because under the old law and SOP, those folks in need of mental health would have to be handcuffed and placed in the back of a police vehicle. Sadly, my wife and I have personal experience in this regard, and I can tell you that this bill will do a lot of things. It will help citizens who have to make those very, very difficult and awful choices to assist their child, their spouse, their sibling, their loved one, and it will take the stigma of law enforcement making it criminalizing a mental health circumstance. To be sure, law enforcement will still be involved in those circumstances in which someone does need to be restrained for their safety or the safety of others. But in other circumstances, EMTs who will be trained pursuant to funds provided for in the budget will be able to do the transport of the individual to a mental health facility for that hold in coordination with law enforcement. What it means for law enforcement is that law enforcement extracts itself from that mental health role. Law enforcement can get back to what law enforcement needs to do, which is enforce the laws and keep the streets of the city of Albuquerque safe, not be waiting for hours and hours at different psychiatric hospitals to process folks. That was the last bill passed by the legislature with, I think, about a minute to go. It got concurrence in the Senate. And I think it's gonna, I have a word friend who always tells me that the word impactful is not a word, but I'm gonna use it anyway. I think it really will be impactful to both law enforcement as well as our citizens, our mental health care workers, and it's something I think we can all be proud of. SB 8 is the air quality bill, a very large bill that had a lot of different twists and turns. Senator Candelaria worked with some of the interests on the NMOGA side to make sure that the changes and the ordinances would have to have a higher standard than the original bill had so that the stakeholders can have their say. What this will allow is specifically, it's mostly germane to City of Albuquerque. It allows City of Albuquerque to pass air quality ordinances and laws that are more strict than the EPA guidelines, but that are tailored to the needs of the community. Many of us, I was born and raised on the west side of Albuquerque, would drive my bike to the bluff and see the infamous brown haze of my youth. I'm quite proud that that is now more of a transient thing, but we all know that that still can occur. Specifically, it can occur in more of our at-risk communities, the San Jose community and others. And so it's going to allow folks on our air quality board to specifically address those. Ryan Mast was the director of the Environmental Health Department, was just a champion at every moment, was an expert witness for Majority Leader Worth. Cindy Leineman worked behind the scenes as well, helped answer all the questions that were needed. There was lots of questions about how this would impact statewide. The reality is this bill is largely a City of Albuquerque bill because it relates to cities of our size, and will allow the city to pursue a path that is more protective of our air quality while still keeping the standard pretty high for stakeholders to address. Senate Bill 84 was the latest version of the Community Solar Act that's been moving for many years, finally made it across the finish line. I believe that may have been signed this morning by the governor. It will make solar accessible to more folks, especially within the City of Albuquerque, if you want to participate in that program. So that is something that is going to be available for our citizens. The session ended for lots of folks on March 20th. For me, it did not, because we had a little thing called cannabis in the special session that I have worked on for another client. Of course, I've worked on it for the City of Albuquerque, and so far as that it has I see Councilor Davis is giving the thumbs up. He knows a little bit about this as well. The short for the city is in April of next year, the state TRD, through a very streamlined process, will start collecting excise tax, and the city can get on top of the GRT 4%. All the studies that have been shown from experiences in Colorado and otherwise will prove that this will be a resource that the city will get to enjoy. There will be money coming in. Of course, you all will get to decide what to do with it. Just like on the state level, all the money is going to the general fund. There was a push for specific earmarks for different types of programs. That did not happen. Instead, it'll go to the general fund. There'll be appropriations going down the road as to what the money will be used for, whether it's for addiction therapy, whether it's for public safety, whether it's for education. I think we'll just use the experience of other states as well as our own. But the current regime is that RLD will be rolling out rules and regulations. They can start issuing licenses, I believe January 1, but it will be it's no later than April 1st of next year. Cannabis will be legal in the state of New Mexico. Along with that, there was a companion bill that deals with expungement of records. It's both, it will involve the release of, believe it or not, a very small number of folks who are in prison or jail right now for exclusively only cannabis related crimes. You are not qualified for release if you have other crimes that you have been incarcerated for. But more importantly, what it'll do for our workforce is the whole category of folks who are prevented for applying for different kinds of assistance programs or even jobs because of cannabis charges or convictions they may have had when they were quite young. Those will be expunged from their records. So those folks can participate in different programs and can also enter the workforce. Of course, for our business community, there will still be protections. You know, it still will not be legal to go to work, to drive high. An employer can still fire somebody, of course, for showing up intoxicated, no different than if they were intoxicated on prescribed drugs or alcohol. So there are employer protections. City of Albuquerque will still have those protections for its workforce. Of course, cannabis will only be legal like alcohol for individuals who are 21 years of age and older. But the economic impact will be substantial. It's only a question of how much. I'm looking at my notes. I believe those were the major pieces of policy legislation. Karen Myers worked at length on House Bill 111. That was a housing bill. It's unfortunate that that died in Senate Judiciary, because that was actually one of those things that stalled for a while in House Judiciary until exactly what the legislature always promotes, which is a grand compromise between the stakeholders, including the apartment association, that would really give folks a better shot at avoiding homelessness, a better shot at staying a renter, a better shot for apartment owners and landlords to keep tenants and keep a good history of tenancy. Unfortunately, that died in Senate Judiciary. So I think there'll be efforts to get that on the call next year in the 30s, since it made so much progress, but that remains to be seen. There's a lot of things died this year, so I think there's going to be a very long list. I'll end by saying, in my years at the legislature, I've seen more and more the evolution of really law being created during the interims. And so I'm happy to continue to report as we go forward, as the interim schedule is developed. But counselors that have particular policy interests, I would encourage you all to keep your eye on the interim schedule, to let us know of things that you're interested on that are going to be heard at the different interim committees. Because almost any bill now that is in a session, especially now in a 30, the question is going to be by the members, what happened in the interim? Was this vetted in the interim? What did the interim committee say? And in the old days, a lot of lobbyists would pride themselves on not even going to interim committees. But I think the interim committees are really becoming important in terms of developing what's going to be heard during the session. So I encourage folks to look at those. Those will start getting formulated very soon and laid out. Everybody has my contact information, and I'm happy to visit with folks as things come up in the different interims. Thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. That was really a good recap of some of the most important bills that we heard about in Santa Fe. So I'll just invite counselors, anyone who might have a question. Counselor Bassan, do you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Vice President. Mr. Jaramillo, when did you say that the expungement would go into in effect?
That will start 90 days after the governor signs the legislation, is when that all will start kicking in.
Okay, thank you. I was very curious. I was having a conversation with somebody, and it didn't make sense to wait until the law goes into effect.
Right.
But so thank you for the clarification.
And I think it's important. I think that in one of the committees, it was the numbers were actually revealed as to, because I think there was this belief that the doors of the prisons and the jails were going to open, and there was going to be this flood of folks out. It was actually a surprisingly a very discrete number of folks. I think the expungement is really, in terms of, I'll use that word again, more impactful in terms of folks who have that black mark on their resume. I mean, I have a nephew who was not allowed to, this is a federal issue, but was not allowed to go into the Air Force because he was caught when he was 16 with the tiniest bit of cannabis. So I think that will be what we'll see most quickly.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. O'Donnell, did you have your hand up raised?
Yes, Madam President, Joe Thompson made me think of something as he thanked people for their assistance. I want to do that in terms of the Intergovernmental and Legislative Committee that has worked with Kyriakis and myself for the past 3 months on matters related to the Washington agenda. And I also thank Isaac Padilla and Tom Manacucci for their assistance in working on the appropriations requests. So thank you.
Thanks for saying that. Appreciate those words. So, if there are no other questions for any of our lobbyists here, we'll go ahead and go back to our agenda. As I mentioned, there's no economic development presentation. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for coming again. Really
Thank you.
appreciate all of you guys and what you all do, truly.
Thank you.
So, going to general public comments, I believe we do have at least a couple, at least 2 people signed up for general public comments. So I'll go ahead and read the paragraph or 2 here. I'd like to greet those joining us today to provide live public comment. We also have received written comments that were distributed to the counselors in advance of today's meeting. And members of the public will be able to address the council if they have signed up for live public comment per the rules published on the agenda and on our website on Friday. Speakers will be moved into the meeting room 2 at a time. They will remain muted with their camera off until they're called upon to speak, at which point they can turn on their cameras, unmute themselves, and they will have 1.5 minutes to provide comments to the council. After that, they will again be muted and returned to be an attendee of the Zoom webinar. And here are the public comment ground rules. Each participant does have 1.5 minutes to present. The comments are to be addressed to the counselors only through the council president, and that's me, the council vice president. And disruptive conduct will result in removal from the Zoom webinar. There'll be a 1.5 minute time limit, and the timer will start once you begin speaking. Then the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, will let you know when your time is up. Mr. Moya, if you would please call the first name of our first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Our first speaker is Jonathan Siegel. Feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking.
Thank you. I speak today to support immediate action and approval of Councilor Benton's proposal R-144 for a temporary ban on new permit parking. The immediate action is necessary down near the Rio Grande because there are increasingly fewer places for the public to park to access the river and related recreational trails. Further applications for restricted parking in the area would have a wider negative impact and effect on citizens of the city as well as on visitors. Please imagine what this might look like for an out-of-town visitor, perhaps someone who's contemplating moving here, perhaps someone just passing through. Your constituents from all across the city ought to have the same access to this area as well, just as we occasionally wish to visit other areas of the city. The proposal would have an impact on my own home and my neighborhood. We live near the river, and people park in front of our house to visit the Bosque. I am advocating for continued public access to both the Bosque and related areas and for public access to parking on public streets, including my own. The Nature Center is presently run by the state, and its parking area is gated prior to 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. This leaves the street as the only viable parking alternative for early morning and evening recreation. I do not consider the curb in front of the house to be mine. It is a public street and a public amenity. Diffuse parking is minimally invasive and is likely far preferable to concentrated parking lots on property which does not even exist. I urge your support for immediate action and, of course, stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siegel. Our next speaker is Joe Almers. Mr. Almers, please feel free to turn your video on, unmute yourself, and your 1.5 minutes will begin when you start speaking. If you could unmute yourself, Mr. Almers. Looks like you're muted on your end.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. There needs to be designated parking in our neighborhood for visitors to go to the Bosque. All of us agree on that, but we don't agree that the neighborhood streets are the solution. Before we had permit parking, increased traffic and parking on Trellis caused greater safety issues as well as diminishing the quality of life of the people on our street. The charm and quietness and relaxing atmosphere of Trellis has been overwhelmed with all the significant traffic increase, more noise, speeding, and traffic congestion, mainly at Candelaria and Campbell Road. Some people in the neighborhood have expressed concerns of permit parking on Trellis pushing visitor parking to other parts of the neighborhood. But that's already happened. No parking on Candelaria west of Trellis has pushed parking to Trellis. No parking on Campbell Road from Rio Grande West to the Bosque has pushed parking to Trellis. So since it's been proven that be effective in solving parking issues, the residents on Trellis are requesting that the residential permit parking area be left in place and enforced until the new evaluation criteria is established. If there's a future vote to rescind the parking on Trellis, then no parking on Campbell Road and Candelaria should also be rescinded, since they are the main contributors to a lot of the parking on Trellis right now. Then the parking will be open to the entire neighborhood to address.
Thank you, Mr. Almers. Madam Vice President, that concludes general public comments.
All right, thank you. We'll move on then to the fifth item, administration question and answers. Do we have any questions for the administration? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to the journal. I'm going to move approval of the March 15th journal. Is there a second? I have a second from Councilor Benton. Thank you for that. And we need to take a vote on that.
Councilor Bassan.
Yeah.
Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Harris. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Senna.
Yes.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. And then next is communications and introductions. Are there any changes to the letter of introduction? Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of introducing O58 and placing it on the April 19th council agenda for action. O58 is authorizing the issuance and sale of City of Albuquerque Industrial Revenue Bond for the Affordable Solar Project, Series 2021, in the maximum principal amount of $8 million to provide funds to finance the acquisition, renovation, development, improvement, and equipping of a facility for a renewable energy production and storage technology research and development company.
So we have a motion for introducing this for immediate action. Is there a second? I'll second that. And could we please get a vote, Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. And just to clarify, this motion is for late introduction and will be placed on the April 19th agenda. Councilor Bassan.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Benton.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Harris. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Senna.
Yes.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. And next, Councilor Senna, do you have a motion?
Yes. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of introducing R150 and placing it on April 19th council agenda for action. R-150 is adjusting fiscal year 2021 general fund appropriations to provide for additional support for the Pan-Asian student community and approving a supplemental agreement with the New Mexico Asian Family Center for administration of the program.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. And we'll go ahead and move to a vote. Madam Clerk?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And third one is for Counselor Benton. I guess the third and the fourth one, and the fifth one. The last three are yours, Counselor
Thank you,
Benton.
Madam President, Vice President. I move the rules be suspended for the purpose of placing OC 30 on today's agenda for action. OC 30 is the staff's recommendation to appoint Mr. Richard Johnson to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board.
I'll go ahead and second that motion.
Madam President, I have a question. I apologize. I couldn't get my hand raised.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wonder, Counselor Benton, I wonder if Mr. Johnson is available for question and answer today. I had a couple of emails today about him, and I wonder if we would have a chance to speak with him if we place it on tonight's action, or if we could hold that over for our next meeting.
Counselor Benton, what was
Yeah.
your intent?
I don't, is Mr. Johnson present?
Madam President, I can answer that question for them. Mr. Johnson was not available today. He had a death in the family and was out of town. So actually, we are actually awaiting the results of his background check as well. He wasn't able to get that information due to that funeral. So he won't be available tonight. Unfortunately, I think the idea is to defer this item to the next meeting when he is available, and we've gotten the results back. Yeah.
All right, I will move.
And that motion is later on in our script today. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, he's not available, Counselor Davis. So if there's no other comments, then we'll go ahead and move.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. To that point, if I may, that given that his background check is not complete and there might be some other questions, I wonder if the sponsor, he's not available today. I wonder if the sponsor would be willing to wait until the next meeting to do a regular introduction or some other motion. I don't believe there's a CPOA meeting between now and the next city council meeting anyway that he would be able to serve on. And so I don't see any objection to waiting just a minute.
Counselor Benton, is that your intention?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sponsoring it. It's an OC from our staff. So yeah, I don't have an issue with that we would just put it procedurally, Ms. Yara, this could just be placed on the next council meeting's agenda.
If the introduction goes through tonight, Councilor Benton, it would be placed on the agenda for the next standing committee. In this case, you know, it would go to public safety, I guess.
You know, my preference would be to get this position filled as soon as possible. However, if there are questions, obviously they should be answered, and obviously the background check should be completed. If we could go ahead and approve this motion, then I will move for a deferral when we get to the item on the agenda.
Yes, sir.
I would be glad to support that, Madam Chair. That's a great compromise and a great answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sounds like a good plan. Then
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
yes,
Passes unanimously.
hey, Counselor Benton, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I move that the rules be suspended for the purpose of placing R-144 on today's agenda for action. R134 is establishing a temporary halt to the creation of new residential parking permit areas and directing that the residential parking permit established for the area of Trellis and Decker between Campbell Road and Candelaria be rescinded until such time as new evaluation criteria can be established.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank motion and a second. Let's go for a vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes,
Passes unanimously.
thank you. Counselor Benton.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I move the rules be suspended for the purpose of introducing R149 and placing it on the April 19th council agenda for action. R149 is a resolution declaring the intent of the city to issue industrial revenue bonds for El Encanto Incorporated project, doing business as Bueno Foods, in an aggregate principal amount of up to $10 million in connection with a proposed project located in the city of Albuquerque.
Second.
I'll go ahead and second that. So we have a motion and a second.
For R149, placing it on tonight's agenda.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
7-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and move the approval of the letter of introduction. Do I have a second?
Second.
The second from, I think it was Counselor Jones. All right. And then we'll
Go to a
go
vote.
to clerk.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. We have no reports of committees. So then we'll go to deferrals and withdrawals. Do we have any deferrals or withdrawals at this time? Counselor Senna or Davis?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. In the matter of O39, enacting the Healthy Families and Workplace Ordinance to require that employers in the city provide paid leave to employees, as Mr. Jaramillo reported, that House Bill 20 is sitting on the governor's desk. So I move a deferral until April 19th.
Do you have a second? We have a second from Counselor Davis.
So
So
go ahead with the vote, please, ma'am. Clerk?
Clerk?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, and then next, we'll move this for Council President Borrego, R130, which is establishing a city healthy communities, public health and sustainability policy committee. I'll move deferral until June 7th. Do I have a second? There's a second from Councilor Senna. And we need a vote, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, now for the consent agenda, do we have any changes now for the consent agenda? I don't have any on the script, but I guess there are none, no last minute ones either. So thank you for that. For the individuals on tonight's consent agenda who are being appointed to serve on a board or commission and who may be appointed to serve on a board or commission, and who are watching from home, thank you for your willingness to serve. I'll move the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you, Counselor Senna, for the second.
And we'll go to a vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones. Counselor Jones,
Yes.
thank you. Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
passes unanimously.
All right. And moving on then to announcements. Counselor Bassan, do you have an announcement?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. There will be a Finance and Government Operations Committee meeting on Monday, April 12th at 3 p.m. via Zoom video conference.
Thank you. And Counselor Senna?
There will be a Public Safety Committee meeting on Tuesday, April 13th at 3 p.m. via Zoom video conference.
Okay, Counselor Jones?
There will be a Land Use Planning and Zoning Committee meeting on Wednesday, April 14th at 3 p.m. via Zoom video conference.
Very good, thank you. First off, our next, rather, I guess I should say, item 12, under public hearings, we have AC 21-2, which is Garcia, Kramer and Associates, Agent for Charter School Solutions, appeals the zoning hearing examiner. And we have our council attorney, Mr. Melendres, here, who can present this and explain the appeal.
Thank you, Madam President. The issue in this appeal is whether or not an LED sign, which is prohibited in specific locations within the city, may be authorized through a variance. The zoning hearing examiner evaluated this question. It was a variance request to allow an LED sign approximately 540 feet away from tramway. The IDO prohibits such signs within 660 feet of tramway. The applicant requested a deviation to allow that sign to exist at that location. However, the IDO having the language of prohibition, the ZHE determined that a variance was not an option at that location. In reviewing the appeal, the LUHO concurred with that determination. Specifically, there's a section of the variance test that says that if the variance will not materially, that is, the variance may be approved if it will not materially undermine the intent and purpose of the IDO or the applicable zone district. In this instance, the sign is not permitted at this location, and therefore a dimensional deviation relative to it could not be approved. That was the determination of the ZHE, and LUHO is recommending that that determination be affirmed. Council won't hear from the parties tonight. You'll be considering tonight only whether to accept or reject the recommendation of the land use hearing officer. If you reject that recommendation, we can schedule a hearing for this matter at a later time where the parties can be heard.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Melendres? Counselor Harris, do you have a question?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'm just curious, this is in my district, and I'm just wondering, what is the policy? I don't think it matters for this because I guess it's clear, but what is the policy about the LED and tramway? What does anyone know why that?
Madam Vice President, councilors, essentially there's about 6 different roadways within the city that are specifically identified as not permitting LED signs within certain proximity, in this instance, 660 feet. LED signs are of a different character than what is, traditionally considered signage for a shopping center or any other land use. They obviously have a tendency to be brighter. They can affect views differently, especially at night. Residents oftentimes are impacted by bright LED lights more so than they would be, for example, by an uplit monument sign at a location. And the specific policy for tramway isn't written out within the IDO, but I think that if you look at that road and some of the other roads, which unfortunately I don't have the list in front of me, but there are a handful of other roads. If you look at that road and just kind of identify some of its character and characteristics in the city, it's obviously a gateway to the foothills. It obviously is enhanced by natural landscaping on both sides. There have been efforts to make some kind of aesthetic prevalence, consistency with the nature of the pedestrian crossings that are made out of natural materials. And it would appear that the artificial lighting and the brightness, there was a policy determination made that that wasn't appropriate to sort of preserve the character and viewscape of that roadway.
Thank you. And the motion would be make a motion to accept the, what would it be, the findings and conclusion of the land use hearing officer?
Madam Vice President and Councilor Harris, that's correct.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the Lujo recommendation and findings. Is there any other questions? If not, we'll, I don't see anybody.
Hands up. Oh, yes, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
I'm sorry,
Councilor Benton.
Councilor Benton.
Did you have
Did
your
you
hand
have a
up?
hand up?
I did, just quickly, I think this is an important case, and I think again, how this particular roadway was developed is relevant, but also wanted to look back and remember that Councilor Harris and I co-sponsored some of this language way back when we tried to tackle the issue of digital signs, and it is a touchy issue, but it seems to me that that the decision making as we went along with the process here through the ZHE and the Lujo, that the thinking was pretty solid, that this should not be granted. So I do support the motion.
Thank you. So I do have one question before we vote. Beg your indulgence here for just a moment. And I think it's probably almost a grammatical logic for me. But in the staff write-up, Mr. Melendres, you mentioned that the Lujo did do a thorough analysis and that it does in fact constitute a use variance because the sign is not a permissive use at this site. So what came to my mind was, so does that mean then that a non-dimensional use variance is not permitted anywhere where there is not a permissive use granted?
Madam Vice President, so a dimensional variance can be requested and evaluated relative to dimensional limitations, the size of a sign, its setback, that being a key term, the setback of the sign. However, if a use is not permitted in general, then the IDO prohibits a variance to allow that use. And so that's termed as a use variance. So the two categories of variance sort of in traditional thinking are dimensional variances and use variances. The IDO and the zone code before it all prohibited use variances. And it makes some amount of sense because we have a pretty established process for the change of use in the zone code. And it requires a showing of certain elements of changed condition, of a mistake, elements that might be sort of backdoored, if you will, if you could simply apply for a variance and apply a different test to get sort of the same outcome. So the IDO, sort of the internal logic of it, appears to be that the use variance is not permitted, and that is expressed through the language of the IDO.
Right. So in other words, if we were in a conditional use situation, that would be there could be a permission for a variance. Well, yeah, you wouldn't need
Madam President, I think, yeah, so it would be a conditional use permit. So, I think the three categories that are relevant to your inquiry of the status of a use is it can be permissive by right, it can be conditionally permissive, or it can be not permissive whatsoever. And we're dealing with the third category. And so either of the other categories, there would be an opportunity here to do something with this type of sign.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? Let me check. I don't see any other hands raised. So let's move forward with the vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes,
passes unanimously.
very good. Thank you. So we have the rest of our agenda is very brief, I believe. We do have an approval then. Well, this is the approval for the recommendation to appoint Mr. Richard Johnson to the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board. And Counselor Benton, are you there? You were there and I don't see you now anymore.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So let's see, I guess I need to move the OC and then I'll move the deferral. So I will move OC 30.
Second.
Thank you.
Is this
And,
a motion? What is your motion?
this is just, I mean, it's a move to approve the OC, but subsequently, as I stated, we're going to move for a deferral.
Gotcha. Okay. So we do have a motion and a second. I believe that was from Counselor Jones. A second.
Right.
All right. We're ready then for
And then,
vote.
Madam Vice President, I'll move a deferral until April 19th.
Okay. So then we'll be voting on the deferral, correct? Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes, and thank you, Counselor Ben.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson,
Yes. Yes.
7-0, the matter is deferred to April 19th.
Very good. Thank you. And it looks like, oh, almost the last one. So that is the last one. Under final actions, we do have R144. Counselor Benton, you're the counselor. Do you want to present this?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. R144, I read it before, but I'll read it again. And then we do have an amendment to this that I'll explain. R144 is establishing a temporary halt to the creation of new residential parking permit areas, directing that the residential parking permit area established for the area of Trellis Drive and Decker Road between Campbell and Candelaria be rescinded until such time as new evaluation criteria can be established. I move a do pass.
Second that.
And thank you, Councilor Jones. Councilors, just quickly, if I may, Madam Vice President, I'll just give a little bit of background on this. It did get some coverage in the Albuquerque Journal and definitely some email discussion recently. I think everyone was copied on, but this is the kind of thing that if it happens in your district, you got to deal with it whether you want to or not. And so this wasn't certainly don't believe that, for instance, the parking division did anything wrong. They followed their procedures. The applicants followed their procedures. Mr. Almers, did a very thorough job and knocked on everybody's door and did what was supposed to be done under the enabling legislation from years back. We don't know which council wrote that stuff, but it was pretty skinny. It doesn't provide much in the way of metrics or detail about what should be considered. It simply says that they can establish a program, and they did, and that program involves a petition process where just 51% of people on a street can, if they agree, that these kind of zones can be established. And normally we've never had much trouble with this. I think the history of this goes back to some extent to the university residential area just south of UNM, where there are a lot of apartments, very little, because of just so many driveways and such, there are very few on-street parking spaces. So those residents have to share those on-street parking spaces with businesses and et cetera. And obviously a high demand of students and faculty and staff of UNM who might have otherwise wanted to park on those spaces. So that, I recall anyway, that's just from my own memory of kind of one of the areas where this was most popular and when it really took off. And then we've had discussions over the years with our discussions about zoning and the IDO and zoning reform that we do need such a program. There's certainly a need for this program. The question is, in this case, when I'm pretty sure this would be the most widespread use in one action of this residential parking permit program. So two pretty long streets in that area near the nature center, as we've mentioned by the speakers, were so designated. I have a separate introduction that was on the letter of introduction tonight to go to committee, which is the ordinance, trying to just kind of kickstart this, what I would call, this bill would be the pause part of it, the resolution, and the ordinance would be hopefully a discussion about a more robust set of criteria and different situations, right? I live down the street from the Alvado Motel. It's a big hit, but some of my neighbors don't like having a lot of people parking on the street from it. And our neighborhood will probably have to deal with this ourselves. But there's got to be a balance, when also we have, for instance, an older apartment building that probably pre-existed the zoning code and they don't have enough parking on the site. These are the kind of discussions that should be, or considerations that are legitimately should be discussed when we're talking about residential parking permits. But I'm concerned about the breadth of this one, about how far it goes. And I think there, as was stated in some of the email and so forth and previous public comment, there's a concern that this will just keep snowballing in this one particular area where there will be no on-street parking left. And then it's like, well, if you want to go to the boat ski, you're going to have to find another place to go, or else you're just going to do it you'd be able to do it between 8 and 5 when the state parking lot is open. We have had some discussions back and forth with the administration. There was, I think the legal department had some questions, and I do have an amendment that would, pretty significant amendment. It would still create the temporary pause in issuance of new permits. But in terms of the existing action that was done on Trellis Drive and Decker Road, would treat it differently. So if I could, I'd like to read floor amendment number 1. And what this does in the title, page 1, lines 3 to 7, amend as follows: directing that the city stay enforcement of the residential parking permit area established for Charles Drive and Decker Road between Campbell and Candelaria, and you can see it strikes out the rescission language. And then on page 2, it describes that in detail on lines 20 through 24. It's amended to read: the city shall stay enforcement of the public parking restrictions associated with the residential parking permit area on Trellis and Decker Road between Campbell Road and Candelaria Road for the same duration reference in section 1. So for that same 6-month or less period, it would be 6 months if it took that long. It would be less if we can come up, and the parking division. We can work together with council staff and come up with some different criteria that are described, at least roughed out in that ordinance. If you want to look at what those are, just my and Chris Melendres is thinking about that or reflected in that. But this, as explained, this would change the language from rescinding the action to a stay on enforcement. And that was an approach and kind of a compromise between our discussions and Mr. Melendres' discussions with the legal department.
Counselor Benton, then you're making a motion on this?
I think I moved the bill, or if I didn't, I apologize.
Right.
So this would be floor amendment number 1 to the bill.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that.
And I think if there's any, questions as to the detail, I'm not sure exactly all of the detail, but this is a different approach as opposed to a wholesale rescission of the action. It would be a stay on enforcement during the same period of time.
So, Counselor Benton, we do have one person who's requested to be heard on this, and I think we've brought her in, Miss Peggy Norton. So if, Miss Norton, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I believe I'm unmuted and video here. Okay, I had signed up early this morning for public comments, so I'm not sure how that didn't happen, but I'm glad to be speaking for the bill. I spoke several times, or I wrote comments earlier back in February. I spoke comments. That was on my personal immediate reactions to this. I'm now speaking on behalf of the North Valley Coalition. I'm president. We ran these, the ordinance itself and the resolution through our executive committee this morning, and the vote was taken to approve the resolution of a pause for 6 months, and I guess now a stay of enforcement, which means it wouldn't be enforced. Our concerns are the same ones I had earlier, is yes, that this is going to snowball. There already is another petition. People will go other places and park, and then those streets will be shut off, and we'll have no access, no public access to the Bosque. It's unreasonable to expect parking lots all down the west end of Rio Grande in order to get to the Bosque. I realize the impact to the neighborhood because of COVID. People are there 7 days a week instead of 2 days a week. That's creating a problem. But that hopefully that is temporary. And we do support more accountability and public input in approving any permit parking. This is the first one, I believe, in the North Valley. And so I think it's really important that it be done right, if it's done at all.
Hey, thank you, Miss Norton.
Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Certainly. Okay, Counselor, back to you. You have a close?
I didn't know whether administration wanted to speak on this at all. We have I did include them in the drafts of the legislation and had discussions with them. Their biggest concern was that, as I described before, that was addressed by the amendment. But I think in discussions with them, they agreed that we really should take another look at how we analyze these requests, and that they not just be based simply on a petition.
Madam President, and Councilor Benton, we're happy to work with you on this. This is obviously a interesting issue as it relates to where some of our facilities are. I mean, the North Valley is obviously one with what we've got there, but there are other parts of the city, and we also believe that the criteria for making these decisions needs a little more evaluation. So, and we are okay with the amendment. It makes sense to us, so we're good.
Thank you, Mr. Ryle.
Okay. So, anything else, Counselor?
No, Madam Vice President, if there are no other questions from counselors, I urge your support. I think we can get this new language tackled in a fairly short order and not have to take this entire 6 months but that's sort of the worst case scenario. Urge your support.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Ms. Yada for the vote.
Okay, yep, thank you. This is a vote on the amendment. Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
and Counselor Gibson.
Yes,
That passes unanimously.
thank you. So, just want to double check. That is our last item of
We have to
business.
take a vote on the final bill.
Oh, yeah, we better do that. We passed the amendment, and I thought that was good enough, at least momentarily. So then, Councilor, do you have a close for your bill?
Urge your support.
Thank you, sir. Ms.
All
Yada?
right, R144 as amended, Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Harris,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
and Counselor Gibson.
Yes,
That also passes unanimously. Thank you.
thank you. And now I think we are out of business, so this council meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice evening.